There's just a little bit more of the main content area of our home page that needs to be styled. It's this section here. So let's get to that. Let's take a look at the Photoshop file that we're trying to match. And it's this region here. So it's this featured widgets text. And then our list of 2 widgets here with a title, description, their image, and this view product button here. So that's what we're going to be styling. Let's take a look at the HTML that covers that area. It's in our index.html file here. I have our whole project open in TextMate. And it starts right here. It's just this H2 tag of featured widgets. And then each of those 2 widgets is wrapped in this list with an ID of featured widgets. So let's style this H2 tag first. Now it doesn't have any special IDs associated with it. So let's actually put the styling for this H2 tag in our style.css file so that we can reuse it on other pages if need be. So all H2 tags on the site are going to look like this. It's going to have a color associated with it. It's that blue color. Let's grab that blue color from actually the first navigation item in our list. So if we look at that, it's this by widgets. And that's kind of cool to tie the color of by widgets into what the featured widgets are. So that's working. Make the color that color. It's all uppercase again. So we'll say text transform uppercase. It has a bit of a shadow to it. We're going to go ahead and steal the shadow that we used for the H1 tag. It's not bold, and H2 tags are by default bold, so we'll say font weight is down to normal. It's biggerish. We'll set that size up a little bigger. And we'll push some things below it down with margin. And we'll see how we're doing in the browser. Looking pretty good. It's just tight to each other, so we forgot the letter spacing. So let's say letter spacing, literally the space between 2 letters there, and pull it out a little bit. So that's looking good. Now we have the 2 widget areas here. And again, just as a reminder, that's this UL tag, unordered list with an ID of featured widgets. So because this is specific to the home page, we'll put it in the home.css file. Say featured widgets. And the thing I'm going to do first is list style none. It's going to get rid of these bullet points that we don't need. And we're going to set these, each of those list items in this list, featured widgets list item, to position relative, because we're going to be doing absolute positioning within it. So we're just setting that context again, and then give it some bottom margin so that we can push that second one away from the first one just a little bit there. Now we want to be styling this title, so that's an H3 tag within here. It's probably not going to be like H3 tags on the rest of the site, so let's make the selector for it fairly specific. And we'll give it that same background as the color of the H2 tag. So let's go steal that. That's that blue color as the background. We'll make the actual color white. Not quite as big in the font size world. Also not bold. Let's put some padding around it. And we're going to kick it in from the left. So before I do that, let's see how we're doing in the browser. It's looking good, but in our mock-up, we're actually going to get this image and put it up here, kind of breaking into this bar. So we're going to kick the actual text inside this bar over to the right. Take a look in Photoshop so you can see what I mean. Kick that text over to the right so there's room for this image. So let's kick it over 200 pixels. You can see what that does in the browser. Just moves it over. Now we need to move this text over as well, and that's a paragraph tag in there. So we'll say featured widgets LIP, and to kick it over, we'll just give it some padding on the left. So padding in the left. So top none, right none, bottom none, left 200 pixels. But actually on the top, it's kicked over 204 pixels because of the padding. So we'll actually make this 204 just so it's lined up perfectly. We'll make the color not quite black, but a dark grayish just to give it some differentiation and space it out a little bit with that line height. And we'll give it some top and bottom padding as well. So we'll save, see how we're doing there. Great, it's lined up right, and we have room now for this image. So let's get it up there. Now that's why we set that position relative on this list item, is so we could use absolute positioning to push it up there. It's the image that we're targeting. So if we look at the HTML, it's this image that we're getting inside this list tag. Say position, absolute. And it's actually going to break out of the top a little bit. Just like we did with the logo on the top, we're going to kind of mimic that look, giving it negative 10 pixels so it's higher than the top. And we'll set the left to 0. And check out what happens there. Very cool. We move that up right there, just how we want it to. One last step, this View Product button. Let's take a look in Photoshop. This is the design that we're trying to match. Now this is a generic button style. We kind of just want to be able to apply a class of button to anything in the HTML and have it look like this. So we're going to go into our actual style.css file. I'm going to paste in some code here just because it's a lot of lines. And then we're going to look at it. Right at the top, it's this generic class that we can use with anything. So anything with a class of button here is going to have all this stuff applied to it. Now this is the CSS3 way of applying a gradient without having to use images. So in Mozilla, that's Firefox browsers, from top to bottom is going to be this gradient. It's going to start here and fade to this color. And this covers WebKit browsers like Safari and Chrome. It's going to start here and fade to this. Slightly different syntax there. And then browsers that don't support it will just kind of have a default color. It has some padding. We just do some resets. It has that border. It has a shadow around it. And then when you hover over it, the shadow changes a little bit. The background color changes a little bit. So let's save and take a look at what that button looks like in the browser. Just how we want it to. Has that gradient, has that shadow, has that rollover that we want to. So the last step is just to position it where we want here. And we'll do that with absolute positioning again in our home.css file. Position absolute. And the top value will push down maybe 150 pixels, and to the left, say 32 pixels. Take a look in the browser. Oop, it hasn't quite taken effect yet. Let's see. It's not dot button. That would be a list item with a class of button. We want to target child elements of the list item that have a class. So I just missed a little space there. I'm going to hit save, reload, and that's going to be then positioned just where we want it to be. So that completes the styling of the main content area of our home page.